My name's Paul Marsh. I'm here today to talk about episode 8 in the Microsoft Bot Framework series. And today we're going to be talking about middleware and how to have a multilingual bot. So, middleware, as we've done in the rest of the series, I'm going to show you how we discover this type of stuff. So let's go Microsoft Bot Framework middleware. See if that gets a nice hit. Yes, it does. So this is actually some quite good documentation, but it is quite technical and it doesn't really explain how to use it, but it's definitely worth a read. It is good stuff. But again, all it really does is say go off and take a look at how it's done in the samples. So let's go and do exactly that. So let's open our samples. And wait for Visual Studio. Come on, Visual Studio. So what we're looking to do here with middleware is use a mechanism that allows us to do things that are very common, but just create noise when we're doing our actual business logic of the bot. And the way it does this is it has this concept of a pipeline. So as our bot takes a turn, its on turn method, other things can have their own turn to look and examine the messages coming in and manipulate the messages. There's also a mechanism that allows them to manipulate the messages on the way out as well, and we'll look at that. So now the multilingual bot has loaded, which is the one I want to use as a sample. It has this translation folder here, so I'm just going to lift that directly out of here. So let's just open that folder, and you grab the folder itself, copy that, go into our Maybot, do the same thing in Maybot, so we just open the folder, paste that in, and that will be our translation should appear. So we get all the same classes and methods and everything we need, so that's great. Let's go back to our sample. So where is this thing loaded? Well, it's going to be loaded in the startup, so we are already in the startup class here. So you look for where the bot is actually created. So we got our bot config here, we're coming into the service, adding our states as we normally do, and where it actually says create bot, the add bot, multilingual bot here, we want to do a similar thing in Maybot. So let's just grab this startup method, so the translation's here, copy that and paste it into Maybot in a similar place. So we're looking for where the bot's been created. We created here, so just after this bit we'll put, oh, looks like I've done this before, get rid of that. So we've got the translation, or to just sort out the using statements. I'll just let Visual Studio do that for us. So what we're looking at here is we're grabbing hold of the translation key from this thing called configuration. So when you use translation, this is using the Microsoft Translation API. You're going to need to go off to the Microsoft Translation API service. You're going to need to create a key for it, and that key is a secret, so I'm not going to show you my secret, but I'll show you a copy of it so you get an idea. So in the app settings.json file, you're going to need to put translation key, and it will look something like this that you'll get from the Microsoft API. So once you have that, you'll be able to call this, and this is sort of reasonably strongly typed. You're going to get string out of here. We're going to get translation key, just check it, and then we're going to pass it off into the translation service that's going to do our magic in the background for us. And this is our first example of the thing I wanted to talk about, which is the middleware. We noticed, just to make a quick point here, that in their example they're creating a property here. It's not something I recommend doing, but we'll just follow the example as is. And it's going to have a language preference, and this language preference is going to store what the current user's conversational language is going to be in. So we've done all of that. Let's just run that, just make sure we haven't made any mistakes. I'll just build it. So the build is succeeding, so let's go and have a look at what's happening. So the important thing with middleware is you must implement iMiddleware. As soon as you do that, it's going to be available for you to add it. So as we saw just a second ago, it's got a little constructor here that's passing in the service that it's actually going to use to do the translation and the state property where we're going to get the user's language. So again, we look back at this concept of a pipeline, and just as the bot has an on-turn, each middleware component will have an on-turn as well. So middleware, when it's added, is always going to be added in front of the bot. If you have more than one middleware, which I'll show you in a second, then the order of adding that middleware is important. So the order you add it is the order it's going to be executed in. The next important thing to notice with the on-turn is this next delegate. And what happens with the pipeline is each part of the pipeline, when it does its work, it then has to call next. So we'll have a look at that now. Just come down here. So it calls next. And this allows the pipe to continue. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and eventually the bot. If you don't call next, or this errors, then the pipe will stop and the rest of the pipe won't see it, including the bot. The bot won't see this message. And that can be something you do on purpose. So for example, if you had something that was looking for swear words, expletive words, that you don't want the rest of the pipeline to process, you just want to cut it off there, then you could do that. This is one mechanism you could do that, and the bot would never know that that message ever arrived. So let's talk a little bit more about what's actually happening in the translation aspect of this. So we're going to come in here, and the first thing really it does is the should translate. And I want to talk a little bit about this. So what's going to happen here is it's going to look at that language state property that we had, the accessor, and it's going to say, well, okay, give me the current language. If there isn't a current language, then set it to the default language. And then if the user's language is different to the default language, then we should try and translate. If it's the same, then there's no reason to invoke the costs of the translation API. I just want to dwell a little bit on this concept of default language. In half of this aspect, what we're talking about here is a language that we're going to give to the user if they don't supply one. That's fine, default language, good. However, when it's used here, is the user language, is it equal to the default language? That's a bit of a misnomer. What we really mean here is that, is the user's language the same as the language the bot is speaking in? So just let that settle in a minute. So the bot is always going to be speaking in this default language, which typically, in all the examples I've ever seen, is going to be English. So what that means is all the logic and all the further services they use are only going to be in English, regardless of the multilingual aspect that the user's language they're going to pick. Whatever they choose, we're always going to translate into English, and then from the bot's logic, it's always going to be in English. So that's one way that you can make the bot a little bit easier to work with, but it does come at a cost. So sometimes the translations might be a little bit iffy. And if you really do want to support a language, then you should use the built-in .NET resource language capabilities. But for now, we'll just follow this example and we'll see how this goes. So what I shall do is do a little bit of a hack. I wouldn't do this normally. I would use Lewis to have some sort of message to allow you to change language, but we'll just put a little bit of a hack in here to say if the turn context.activity.text equals DE for German. Now I'm going to grab hold of the language setting. Just nick this here. And we're going to call set async, get the turn context, and we're going to set the value to be German. Cheesy, right? Don't do this, but just to make this sample a little bit easier. So we'll put a little breakpoint there, and we'll run this up. Okay, that looks like that's ready. Yep. So let's come back in here and we'll type in hi, which will, in our bot, will just come back with I don't understand. So type in hi. So obviously the text isn't that. So when we come past here, we should see that the translate really should be is translate. Never mind. Translates false. So we run, and really nothing's going to happen here. I didn't understand what we said. Great. So let's move to German. So we're going to set the language as German. Okay. Still going to get I don't understand. But now you'll notice that it's coming out with German. So how did that happen? So let's come back in here. So whilst we've had a look at here, this is the translation aspect where a message is coming in. Should it be translated? If it is a message, then we're going to go off to the translation API and translate it, and then alter the activity text. So we're going to come in here with a German phrase, we're going to translate it into English, and then put the English as if the user had typed in the English, and then the bot will carry on working, thinking that it's an English text. However, these event handlers here, on send activity, and there's an on update activity as well. These are for the way out. So when the bot is going to come in and it's going to say, I don't understand, we need to convert that I don't understand that's in the English form. We need to convert it to the user's language. So let's just watch that again. So we can watch the whole process through now. Now we're talking in German. So we can just put that in here, change the breakpoint. So I'm going to say, hello. So at the moment, the text is hello. Actually, I've done that wrong. I'm speaking in German. That's not going to work at all. Let me change that around. I need to go off and type in hello, which is in German. My amazing German, I can know how to say hello. So let's come in here. So the text is hello with an A, which is the German equivalent. Should we translate? True. So we're going to come in here, and now we are going to set the text to hello with an E, which is the English hello. That's great. So we'll run that. And now on the way out, we're now about to say, I don't understand. So we'll look at the activities in here. Let's have a look at the activity. Okay, activity. Oops, we've got Lewis trace activity there. As a result. So you want to look for the messages, so I'm just going to grab the activities from here. Okay, and let's look at the Lewis trace. Looking for let's actually get the text in there. It's not the one I'm waiting for. This will be another activity. Here we are. There's the next one coming in. From the emulator, so it looks more like it. So the text in English is, I didn't understand what you said, what you just said to me. So we're going to translate this again on the way out. Call translation API, and hence we get this, which I'm not going to try and butcher by pronouncing it. So this is the German equivalent of I don't understand. So very quickly you can see that we've created the essence of a multilingual bot. We can speak to it in German, it can reply to us in German, but at no point in our core logic of the bot have we introduced any kind of understanding of German. It's all done this via the translation API. So the middleware has provided a transparent mechanism to allow our bot to speak in different languages. So that's really useful. So just a couple of little tips and tricks I want to add to this now. So let's come back in here. So go back into the translation API, and I want to introduce another state mechanism. So when the text comes in here, we've seen that when we say hello in the German, then it's going to get eventually converted into hello with an E in English. But there are times where you do actually want to understand what the original text was. So for example, if the user was saying, I've got a broken printer, and they say that in German, when you send that form off to a support service, you don't want to send the English translation of that. You want to send the original language, and mainly because there might be some nuance in the translation where it goes wrong, the understanding's broken down. But normally when you have a support particular language on a support service, you do actually want to record what the user actually said. You know, the worst thing you can do is go back to them later and say, you said this, and they said, no, I didn't. And the only reason the confusion is because of the translation API. So the upshot is you want to know what the original text was. So what you can use is another type of state called the turn state. And we're just going to say, just going to create a new key in here, pre-translated text. Oops, text. And we can put in, actually we should do this as well. I'll put this in anyway, doesn't really matter. If it's blank, it's blank. So put that in there. And we can take all this out now. And now in our bot, what we can do, so let's get our bot up. So where we get the text, just here, what we'll do is I'll say var pretext equals that. Actually, I don't like that. Pre-translated text equals that. So let's put a breakpoint here. So we start the dialog. So let's run this up again. So because I'm using an in-memory state mechanism, we would have lost all of our state from the previous thing, so I'm going to have to start speaking in German again. So let's just start DE again. Okay. We just won't look at that hack, pretend the hack never happened. So let's try something a bit fuller. So let's come in here and use what we would normally use in our sample. So let's go to something like Bing Translate, because my German is really not up to this, and say, what do you think about the health service? So copy that. No way I'd understand that word. So we're going to come in here and type that in German. So we're now interviewing Mrs. May or Mrs. Merkel, whoever you think it might be. And we've got our dialog result here. So our text is, what do you think about the health service? So the translation has kicked in, but the pre-translated text is still in original German. So we know the difference. We can make different decisions in our logic. So that's really useful. That's great. So I want to add one little additional tip for using middleware. So let's come back in here. So if you remember at the end of our state, or sorry, at the end of our bot, give the game away, we've got this thing where we change the conversation, we save the conversational state and the user state. So we can actually get rid of that, and with the help of middleware, make that a lot easier and a lot better. Now, and I've got to try and remember what this thing's called. Is it auto save? Oh, there, great. So var auto save state. Let's give it its full name. Middleware equals new. And what does this thing need? What's the bot state? So what are our bot states? It's conversation state and user state. And we just want to do exactly the same thing as we did with the translation middleware. We're going to add that. So what's happening now is we've now got two pieces of middleware. We've got the translation middleware and the autosave middleware. And what's going to happen now is that the auto save state middleware is going to kick in and save the state for us. So we won't have to keep on saving our state changes. So that's great. Right. So I think we've pretty much covered everything we need to cover for this. Well, hang on, Paul. You've forgotten a bit. So let me quickly go back to the translation middleware. Just one thing I want to talk about here. We noticed that in our onSend activities, we were doing translate message activity. So I just want to quickly look into that. So it's saying if the type of message, if the activity type is a message, then translate the text. That's great, fine. But in reality, you're going to have to do a lot more work here. So if you're using a hero card or an adaptive card, you're going to have to drill into the suggested actions, the attachments, the buttons, and you're going to have to look at things like the button text and translate all of those too. So it's not just good enough to look at the simple text of the message. You will have to do additional work. Again, this is just a sample showing you how you might start this, but in a real world version of this, you're going to have to do a little bit more of additional work to make sure that your hero cards and your adaptive cards, all your sort of attachments, they're all translated to. Yeah, so thanks for listening. If you have any comments, then please put them in the comment area. If you want to subscribe, then great. If you have any ideas about things that you want to learn about, then also please let me know. That's me. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.